Police believe they have finally solved this 30-year-old cold case, the abduction and unaliving of Jennifer Odom. Trigger warning. A 61-year-old man has been arrested in the 1993 abduction of Jennifer Odom. It was February 19, 1993, when 12-year-old Jennifer Odom stepped off her school bus near her home in rural Pasco County and waved goodbye to her friends. Her bus stop was roughly 200 yards from her home, but she never arrived home. It was like she vanished into thin air without a trace. Jennifer was a 7th grader at Thomas E. Waitman Middle School, where she played clarinet in the school band. Jennifer was also a barefoot water skier who placed high in the tournaments. Often she was the skier who climbed to the top of the human pyramid, gliding atop the water. Together, Jennifer and her sister Jessica built forts, rode four-wheelers, and spent summer days swimming in the creek behind their house on the family's 15-acre property in St. Joseph, a small community west of Dade City. But that would all change February 19, 1993. Jennifer's mother said the morning of February 19th was crisp. Jennifer was dressed in jeans and a turtleneck, both white. She pulled a red cashmere sweater, a gift from her grandmother, over her shoulder-length chestnut hair. She then laced up a pair of black boots and got in the car with her mother. The two drove 200 yards up the winding lime rock driveway to wait for the school bus near their mailbox. Jennifer climbed aboard the school bus and took her usual spot in the back seat so she and her mother could see each other until her mother, following behind the school bus, turned left to head to work. About 4 p.m. that afternoon, Jennifer's 9-year-old sister Jessica arrived to find their house locked and empty. Now usually, Jennifer would make it home from school around 3 p.m., so her sister Jessica called her mother. As the investigation began, some students had seen an old light blue pickup truck near Jennifer's bus stop that day, but no one saw the abduction. Within hours, sheriff deputies launched a wide-scale search, aided by some 400 volunteers who helped scour about 60 square miles of countryside. Jennifer's parents were absolutely distraught. They were terrified. They had no idea where their daughter was, what was happening to her, if she was going to come home, if the family, volunteers, the police department would all search for Jennifer with no luck. The police were becoming very frustrated because how can they investigate something when they have nothing to go on, no evidence at all? But sadly, 6 days later, Jennifer's remains were found near a horse trail off Powell Road south of Brooksville amid a cluster of pine trees in an orange grove. It was about 10 miles from where she disappeared. Former Hernando County Sheriff's Major G.Z. Smith, who oversaw the investigation in its earlier years, said in 1994 that investigators were stumped. He said there was a strong possibility the crime would go unsolved. And what's even worse is that if we solve it, it may take another crime to do it. Nearly 2 years later, a couple searching for scrap metal in a remote area several miles away in western Hernando County found Jennifer's book bag and clarinet case. Investigators were doing anything they could to try to get some kind of a tip in Jennifer's case, including, now get this, in 2007, members of Hernando County Crime Stoppers handed out special playing cards to inmates at the Hernando County Detention Center. Each card featured a brief description of an unsolved case from around the state and a hotline number. Jennifer's card was the Queen of Diamonds and featured 2 of her colored photos. Over the years, investigators amassed some 1,000 pieces of evidence, took thousands of tips, and conducted hundreds of interviews to try to determine who unalived Jennifer. They tried various methods of generating new leads, from billboards to a $20,000 reward to an appearance in 1994's Unsolved Mysteries. So now we have to go back a little bit to January 16, 1992. About 13 months before Jennifer was abducted, Pasco County Sheriff detectives launched an investigation into the attack of a 17-year-old girl who went to Land O'Lakes High School's special education program. She was found in a pool of blood behind an abandoned house. This girl was violently beaten and brutally essayed. Much like Jennifer's case, this girl was brutally attacked after getting off the school bus. Her case went unsolved for years until 2015 when Pasco County Sheriff Department announced that they had new technology, and that technology had led to the arrest of a man named Jeffrey Crum, who is now 53. Investigators used a DNA procedure known as familial searching, which allows law enforcement to find the suspect by comparing DNA left at the scene with that of family members. The shortfall of a standard DNA search is that a suspect's genetic fingerprint must be on file in the offender database for law enforcement to make a match. Crum's wasn't. But when Florida Department of Law Enforcement specialists ran the DNA from semen found on the victim, it led them to Crum's son, Jeffrey Crum II, who is in prison. Investigators then obtained DNA samples from the younger Crum's brother, father, and grandfather. A direct comparison between the DNA found on the victim and that of the father found a match. Now, in 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison for that 1992 case in Pasco County where he attacked, assaulted, and beat and left that 17-year-old girl paralyzed. Hernando County Sheriff said when Crum was implicated in the 1992 case, he quickly, almost instantaneously became our #1 suspect in Jennifer's case because of all the similarities. The sheriff also said biological evidence in the investigation helped lead to Crum's arrest and the indictment in the Jennifer Odom case, but officials did not provide more details, citing it's an active investigation. So Crum was in Hernando County Jail and made his first appearance, and the judge ordered him to be held without bond and appointed a public defender to represent him. The records show that Crum has a significant history of convictions for violent crimes, including a 1981 robbery, a 1985 SA battery and assault case in Hillsborough County. But the records also show that in 1992, Crum lived on Somerset Lane in Spring Hill. His residence was about 20 miles from the place where Jennifer was last seen and 12 miles from where her body was found. And guess what kind of vehicle Crum drove? A blue truck. The sheriff said in both cases, the teens were brutally attacked and violently essayed. However, the victim in the earlier case from 1992, in which Crum was identified as a suspect through DNA analysis, survived after he left her for dead. The MOs in both cases were almost identical, with the exception of Jennifer, as we know, was abducted and found 6 days later. Authorities wouldn't quite confirm what led them to Crum in Jennifer's case, but Bill Gladstone, the state attorney for Florida's 5th Judicial Circuit, said, "We have confidence that we have the right person and that we have the right aggravators in this particular case to treat it as a death penalty case. This is every parent's worst nightmare," he added. "This is the thing that keeps parents up at night, worrying about their children." So finally, after 30 years, it was announced that 61-year-old Jeffrey Norman Crum had been indicted by a grand jury and was being charged with murder, kidnapping, and the SA of 12-year-old Jennifer Odom. So authorities believe they have a very strong case against Jeffrey, and I have to admit there are a lot of similarities, but the investigators aren't saying much right now because this is an active investigation, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens in court. Do you think police have finally solved this 30-year-old cold case? Share your thoughts in the comments.